statement in a way that it applies to them to answer one basic question. Is this company available tomorrow, to meet my needs? So yes, there are multiple signs, there might be one final signs that put the nails on the head, but it's important for us as leaders to be able to watch out for those signs, not be so engrossed in one phase of the organization, whether it's short-term or long-term, in a way that we lose sight of those signs as they emerge. Thank you.
Thank you. There are signs. Okay. So that means you're going with the yes option. All right. So, but for those ones that still picked no, I'm sure they're still trying to wrap their head like, really, how can you really tell? What are those things that you should look out for? So, Sid, we're coming to you. In practical terms, tell me, what are those things? How do you know?
So I will give you a quick experience snippet here. So let's think about a product that you're manufacturing and you're distributing. If you have a supplier who is, say, a predominant supplier in your supply chain, as part of the build-up of the product, and if he comes to you in month one and asks for an advance, it's okay. He's one of your largest suppliers. You're not going to say no. Then month two comes and he asks for another advance. Then he delivers. And then suddenly there's a slippage where he comes back and says, oh, I'm having an issue with a sub-supplier. And then by the time you know it, by month four, he's basically not delivered any product. Now, if you're sitting in a situation where you're running, say, a $1 billion operation, and you cannot recognize any revenue because the guy is making something as simple as a bed that goes as part of an equipment. And now you're faced with the situation of, right, now how do I go about and get the sub-suppliers to start shipping to me directly? So what winds up happening is you have a very simple thing of, it's an advance that one of the biggest suppliers asked for. Or you find that for one of your equipments, suddenly the order and backlog has just crashed over a period of 6 quarters, if you do that level of analysis. So it's on both sides. I guess kind of going back to what David and Duri said before, you need to look at both sides of the spectrum. One is not only the customer side, the second is also suppliers. You may look at your receivables, for example. If your receivables are accruing and you're not able to bring it down quick enough, and you're not able to factor it because you yourself need the money and the bank's not willing to lend you any money to help you out, that's also another sign that if you're putting yourself where your cash cycle, that your AR and your AP, if you're not able to balance the two, again, you have a sign. But all of this comes from data. So whether it's going to be a financial accountant, a management accountant, an FP&A team, even a business analytics team, if you're able to kind of map out each leg of the process with metrics, you're able to see for your specific industry what exactly are the points at which you have points of failures that you can identify. So I think I can tell you what I had done is we use something called an Altman Z-score, which we try to use it as it's a model that was made, and we kind of used it as a risk management tool for early warning signs. But this was, again, post facto. So as David said, the business never really goes back to normal. But if you have a business that's managed to come around the other side, you may want to have a strong, supplier or customer financial risk model that will tell you how good or bad the data is for that customer.
Wow. Thank you so much. I think you really nailed it there. Thank you for that insight. And yes, your supplier, you need to be very mindful of what their state is. And every time they keep coming back for advance, that could be a sign that there's something wrong with that company. And you don't want that to also impact on your ability to deliver to your own customers. So very spot on. So I'm going to come to David on the same matter of warning signs, and with his wealth of experience working in different companies. In your experience, what are those signs that you've observed? and so that you can share with our audience and then they can learn one or two things from that.
Well, it was Hemingway who said that bankruptcy happens gradually and then suddenly. And I think that you should think about that for a second, because that implies that, in fact, they're happening gradually. There were warning signs along the way. And one of the interesting things that we need to think about is why warning signs are ignored. Often because managers go into denial, that they stick their heads in the sand, that they don't want to accept that the business is heading in the wrong direction. If you go back to the first corporations that ever existed, it was at the time of the Roman Republic, when they were the bodies, the public companies that were managing state finances and managing the growth of the Roman Empire at that time. And they started to misbehave as tax collectors and as the sinews of the state that were managing the far-flung provinces. And my point is that they started to do that 200 years before the problem finally led to the downfall of the Roman Republic. So for 200 years, the Senate was aware of the corruption that was going on in those public companies in the growing empire of Rome. And they did one or two things about it, but they did not do enough to stop it becoming such a problem that the whole thing collapsed. That took 200 years. So warning signs, yeah, they're warning signs, right? It doesn't mean to say that anyone's going to see them. Now, to be practical now for everybody, we've mentioned risk assessment. Some companies have risk committees and they have really formalized risk assessment. In my opinion, not enough do. And when they do, it's not taken seriously enough. You need to think, even if it's not formalized in the company, you as chief executive need to be thinking about the risks. I say chief executive should be two things. One is paranoid and one is provocative. Provocative because he needs to kind of generate the ideas and the challenges and keep things moving forward. But paranoid because he needs to think every night, or she thinks every night, what could go wrong in my business? Am I going to wake up in the morning to find the competition have done that or the suppliers have done something else? Anyway, so risk assessment. And then it's the numbers. Adair is absolutely right. But what numbers are you looking at? You're probably looking at the P&L account and you're saying, is my top line declining? Is my gross margin declining? Are my costs increasing? If you've got declining top line, declining gross margin and increasing costs, then you've got a problem. But if you're only looking at that and not looking at the balance sheet, then you're not also going to spot the problems. Because again, Sid talked about working capital. He mentioned working capital quite a few times. What is happening to my working capital? You cannot ignore that and the components of working capital. And both of those things lead you to looking at your cash flow statement, because it's the cash flow statement that's key. You might be making masses of money. It doesn't mean to say you're going to have positive cash flow, not if it's all being sucked up by working capital. So as managers, you've got to look at the numbers. The numbers will tell you, look at all of the numbers, but then, and as I said, it happens gradually, then suddenly. But then what about COVID? You can look at the numbers till you're blue in the face, and COVID could come along, and COVID is not going to help you foresee a problem. So, chief executives sitting out there or managers sitting out there, life's tough, right? And I don't think that means you should ask for a pay increase, because I think that would not be the right thing to do either. But anyway, I'll stop.
Thank you so much, David. Wow. I like the way you twisted that question. That's why do people ignore signs? So if the signs are obvious enough, it just means that some people are not paying attention. So I hope our audience have learned one or two from this, and we've drawn your attention to those signs that can point you in the right direction. And we're also encouraging you not to ignore the signs. Don't ignore the signs, because in turnaround, the earlier you discover where you are, the better. The earlier you discover the problem, the better. You'll be able to come out of it faster. But if your cash flow has deteriorated a lot, then it's going to take more effort and more energy to really revive the company. So do not ignore those signs so that your businesses have a chance to succeed. So I think we've done a lot of justice to most of the questions that have come in already, because that's what we've been discussing all the while. So we just have a few more minutes before we shut down for the day. Thank you so much for your participation. So I spotted a question earlier that I want to bring to everyone's attention, which is, could price reduction be a good strategy to maintain or improve sales volume in a distressed economy with continued decline in consumer purchasing power? So if you reduce your price, would that help you to sustain better business performance? Okay, Audrey, why don't you take that on?
All right, thank you very much, Biodu, for that question. And I would say to a large extent that it depends. You know, sometimes price reduction is a strategy that you use depending on the situation. Now, you have a good product, you know, a very attractive product. However, you realize that, you know, you're just trying to build market share. You know, you're trying to build awareness for that product. And then you say, okay, you know, because I don't have that market acceptance yet for my product, but the quality of my product is really good. However, I have existing competitors who, you know, people are already aware of their products, you know, and the prices are, you know, fairly okay, and people are used to it. So in order to compete, why not I just reduce my price? Sometimes when I go to the supermarket and I'm trying to buy a particular product, you know, because there are different product that can do the same thing, you know, the way I choose largely is around pricing, you know, and so to a large extent, if the quality is the same or fairly comparable to, you know, the existing product, you know, reducing your price could be a strategy at that point in time, really to be able to gain some market share. Now, at the end of the day, it really may not be sustainable because you probably might be reducing your price. You know, when you look at your cost, you are probably maybe making very small margin or probably breaking even. But I think at that point in time, your goal is really to gain market acceptance. You know, and if you look at some of the things that are happening in our market here in Nigeria, a lot of the smaller guys who have, you know, really taken market share from some of those big guys, that's really have been their strategy. That they come into their market and say, we're not charging you fees, particularly the fintechs, we're not going to charge you fees. You know, you can open an account free of charge, you know, no fees and things like that. Whereas the big boys are charging, you know, so it could be a strategy, but depending on, you know, the intention at that point in time. However, you know, you need to continue to monitor it and ensure that it is delivering, you know, the objective while you are deploying that as a strategy.
Thank you so much. I believe that question hit it spot on. So there's another one here. Being pragmatic and innovative in business. Can David explore further on these two? And if there is any relationship between being pragmatic and being innovative? So, David, this is for you in particular.
Yeah, well, no, there isn't a relationship between pragmatic and being innovative. And by the way, guys, just on the other point, you know, if you drop your prices, all you do is lose more money. I've been in circumstances where I went into business and said, you know, we should drop our prices, we're too expensive. And I said, no, we're not expensive enough. And another business where we did drop our prices and our sales still fell by another 25%. So for goodness sake, it really, Odiri said it depends. Her first comment, well, I think it was your first comment, it depends. It really does depend. You cannot assume there's a blanket answer to anything. Pragmatism and innovation. No, look, we'll have a conversation about left side, right side of the brain, you know, won't we, in a minute? You know, do you have within you the potential for creativity and innovation, or does your brain just not work like that? Or does it only work for creative and innovation, and is actually not possible of getting to grips with numbers? So you need a balance. And one of the things I talk about is in business is requiring a balance. You need a balance between your stakeholders, you need a balance between your internal functions, and you need a balance in your own head. It's not given that you have it. You might not have it. If you do, you do. But I don't know whether you can actually create it if you don't have it. But what I do know is you should think about it. Because if you're not